Ruksana Hussain. Really enjoyed talking to this young woman. She's a freelance journalist, highly accredited, very impressive where she's been published, but she focuses primarily now on travel. Born in India, raised in Oman. Are you listening to me, people? Do you know where Oman is? I had to look it up. I'm afraid to report, but it's near Yemen, beautiful area of our world, our planet. She's got great insight on what happened and how she was raised there until she was 10. We talk about travel itself, what to look for, what to watch out for in certain cultures. Just be open minded, people, some myths, some typical kind of stereotypes. We talk about freelancing and pros and cons and where discipline is needed and what motivates her. She's been freelancing for over 10 years. She's out of Los Angeles, by the way. Really interesting conversation on freelancing, on journalism, and of course, travel. Of course, travel's been hit so hard with the pandemic, but soon it'll open and we will reap the benefits of experiencing other cultures. Great conversation with Roxana. You're going to enjoy it. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business? And it lasted over 25 years. Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. So much for
Sounds
doing
good.
this. I
Of course.
yeah, I enjoyed learning about you and so many questions. Okay, so how is the travel industry doing right now?
It's a mixed bag, I would
Mm,
say. There's folks that are enjoying travel, following whatever protocol they can and being safe and making sure they have their vaccines and all of that done. And then there's of course a lot of folks that do have to stay home, be careful. I think it's pretty much a very personal preference type of market right now, and I do believe for the most part only folks that are required to travel are really traveling the most. There are a few adventurous ones that are still out there, out and about, but I think for the most part, it's still a little bit on the iffy side with people trying to figure out where they sort of place on that whole spectrum of do we travel right now, do we not, what's safe, what's good for everyone, what's not, just trying to take it day by day and figuring out what's the best for them.
yeah, I mean, out of all the industries, perhaps travel has been, hit the most with this pandemic. It's so terrible. You're in California, I believe,
Yeah, I'm from
and
California, West Coast. Yep.
the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. I have, my father's in Italy. He's not doing well. I've been meaning to see him for quite a long time. It's not the flight. It's just you're afraid if you get to the country and you test positive, you can't leave for weeks or 5 days or whatever the number is. That's the biggest fear, right?
hmm There's that, and there's so many other factors. There's what happened in my case. My family's in extended families in India. I was actually there earlier last year to
Mm.
see them, and then right as we were about to leave to come back home to the U.S., the India virus, as they called it, started doing the rounds, and
Huh.
unfortunately, our flights were back through the UK, and the UK shut down entirely.
Wow.
So it ended up being where this is one of the factors you don't know, right? So which airline is going to allow you to travel or not? When can you fly by? So we had to end up rerouting ourselves through the Middle East because that was considered like an approved air bubble at that time
Hmm.
to travel through and come back to the US. So I would say, yeah, there's plenty of those adventures going around as well for folks that are traveling. There's just so much up in the air. And if you're well and good with that, then fine. But yes, there's just so much that you have to be careful about, especially being a guest in someone else's, home and in another person's country. I think you just have to be really, really careful.
Yeah, you really do. You mentioned India, and I'm fascinated by this. So you were born in India and raised in Oman.
Yes, correct.
Now, Americans don't know Oman, and I admit I had to look it up right there, and there it's near Yemen. And what
Right
can
there.
you tell? Yeah, right there. Yeah, what can you tell us about Oman?
Oh my God, Oman is gorgeous. I think if anyone ever has a chance to visit, and people who have visited will let you know that Oman is beautiful.
Hmm.
Just beautiful ocean, mountains, amazing hot springs. Um, I think the country has done a good job of maintaining sort of the really nice balance between preserving their own culture and heritage and traditions, as well as allowing for modernization and keeping up with the globalization along with the rest of the world. They've done a
Wow.
really good job of that. So I will say that my time in Oman was my formative years. So I will say up until grade 10. So most of my
Hmm.
schooling was done in the country. And so I have very fond memories growing up there, having this wonderful, very uh, how would I say, very friendly and approachable society. We had great memories of families that we enjoyed times there with. So I will say that that's the most of my experience during those growing years out there. I have not been back since. I have a lot of friends who have been back since, and I am very jealous of them
Hmm.
for making that trip back there. But yes, Oman. I think even in the when I was there, and that was the 90s. A lot of people did not know where that was, and we usually had to say, "Well, do you know where Dubai is?" Well,
Right.
backtrack from there, look at the map, and around there you'll find Oman. But a lot of folks, yes, did not know about it, still don't know about it, and in a way, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yes, but it's a
And of
gem of a
course,
place. Yes.
yeah, I saw, I went, I went and saw some of the, some of the pictures. I mean, it looked beautiful. And later on this year, I'm a big soccer fan, and the World Cup is in Qatar.
Huh?
Uh, and what I hear about Qatar is that it's beautiful, that it's close by, but some of the laws, like with alcohol, and if you're not married and you're with a girlfriend or boyfriend, public displays of emotion are not particularly welcomed. Can you comment on any of this?
I will say it varies across the Middle Eastern region a lot. I have not been to Qatar, so I cannot speak specifically to that space. But I will say that in Dubai, everything is a lot more modern and a lot more what we would call Western culture.
Mm,
So, very open. But there is, I will say again, a very thin, fine line between how far is too far. So you have to be
mm,
aware and you really have to read the signs of the people around you to ensure that you're not doing something that goes against the local culture. And I think that's important no matter where you are in the world, is, keeping an eye out for if you are conforming by local standards, what do people do? How do they greet each other? How much PDA, so to speak, is allowed or not allowed in that country. And I think then you have, so obviously the other extreme in the Middle East is you have Saudi Arabia and you have the very religious countries, obviously. And then the rest of
mm.
the Emirates sort of fall somewhere along there. And you really have to read what the local norms are before you decide to behave a certain way. I will say, growing up in Oman and then having visited Dubai, I was there as recently as about 3 or 4 years ago. Things have changed a lot, and
Hmm.
there is a lot that's so to say allowed or permitted. It's okay for you to behave a certain way in public, but ultra religious folks might be around and you might not want to displease any of them. So
Hmm.
I would say be careful of where you are, always take a pulse for what's happening around you. And be respectful, just be respectful of local norms. If you see locals behaving a certain way, then just understand that maybe your behavior there might not be most welcome.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point, and I think let's talk about culture because it's just not there in the Middle East. We see it in Europe, we see it
Huh?
in other countries as well, where many times, and I'll just say it, many times Americans just kind of want their American way there, and they really, you should really leave, you kind of leave what you know, footprints is it, right? And try not to
Hmm.
impose. Can you appreciate and adopt and learn and respect the culture when you don't know the language or you don't know many things there? How do we do a better job at that?
I think the most important part is just going with an open mind and accepting
Hmm.
that just because you know to do something a certain way does not make it the only way to do that. I think
Hmm.
having that understanding before you step into someone else's home, someone else's country or city is very important to have. I definitely don't expect that because I eat something for dinner in my house that you will do the exact same thing when I turn up at yours.
Right.
What's the
Right.
point?
Hmm.
I want to come there and I want to enjoy what your family has to offer me in terms of your hospitality. And I think that's the exact same mindset you need to have when you visit someone else's country. Is go with that open mind frame of, okay, things are going to be different here, and let's see how much I can learn, how much can I adapt, how much can I explore, how much can I experiment. And I think that's the best part about travel. It teaches you so much about yourself that you would not know just sitting in your room within the four walls of your home. So I think that mindset change is the most important thing that needs to happen. And I think the second thing is being willing to try something different.
Hmm.
You get so used to and so comfortable to what is familiar to you that when you see something that's not, there's this immediate sort of, hold on, what's going on here? How can I make this what I know? And that's not what you need to be doing when you are in
Hmm.
another country. You need to open yourself to the fact that, yes, things are going to be different. And let me learn and see what that is. And who knows, you might learn something that you can then adapt to your own lifestyle, to what you do every day. But if you don't put yourself out there and keep yourself open to absorbing that, then you're missing out on a lot of things.
Yeah, there's just so many. So in the United States, we're innocent until proven guilty. So most of the European countries is the complete opposite. You're
Mm-hmm.
guilty. And just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. I kind of get excited when I hear different things like that because I want to understand. And similar to yourself, you were in Oman at 10. So indulge me for a moment. So I'm 10 years old. This is the end of third grade, first day of summer. My father was an Italian immigrant, gives me a suitcase, tells me to put my clothes in it, proceeds to bring me to the bus station in New Haven. I'm from New Haven, Connecticut. Tells the bus driver to drop me off Terminal 1 JFK. Gives me a picture of my grandmother, says, "You're going to meet your grandmother in Milan." So, a 10-year-old gets on a bus and takes a bus to the airport and asks somebody, and I get on a plane and I fly to Milan. I meet my uncle and grandmother, and I'm in Italy for 11 weeks every other summer until after college. So I get exposed to a completely different way of living, and I just start to get a different perspective. Is travel the best education, Roxana?
I believe it is, depending on the person. I think the
Mm.
individual brings a lot to that experience. And if you are going to be a little bit what we talked about earlier, closed minded to what's coming at you, and you're not welcoming or embracing to that experience, you're not going to get much out of it. Um, and I can, some of, like a very simple example is, you can say on average, most Indian families have some representation outside of India, mostly in the US or in Europe. London and the US or UK and US are typically places where you would. And that's not to say that everyone that's had an education outside of the country comes back with that knowledge. A lot of people
Hmm.
choose to leave that back there and then revert to what's happening at home base. Um, could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. It totally depends on the person and their lifestyle. But I think that plays a big role, for
Hmm.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So yeah, the parents. I mean, I've heard stories. There's a prep school in my town, and You know, people from China send their kids. They've never even been to the United States, and they go to school there. But the idea is to get an education and come back with it. Learn what you have and come back. I never really thought about that. That happens in Indian culture. Are you expected to return?
A lot of times, yes, because there's some Indian families still have very much this mindset of being a joint family. So
Mm,
the idea is, yes, we do send you away for education. You're expected to come back and take care of the family and sort of pay your dues, so to speak. Take care of the elders, take care of your parents. That's sort of the way that used to work, still works in some families. But of course, over time, a lot of people have strayed away from that, chosen to continue to live outside of, and just visit when they can. So there's
mm.
a mix of that happening, but traditionally that used to be the idea that yes, you go away, you learn, you come back, and you try to help get that moving at home.
Very, very interesting. I never even that never occurred to me. Can you appreciate the culture of a place without knowing the language?
I think so. Yes, of course. There's so many ways to experience the culture, and I don't think language is ever a barrier. If you are there to make your best effort, to put your best foot forward, to actually learn and
Mm,
embrace that culture. There's food, there's music, there's art, architecture, design, religion. There's so much that you
mm,
can you can learn that language plays no role in whatsoever. And I think that folks that are interested, even if language is a barrier, will go back and read up on it and try to learn more out of their own efforts. So I don't consider language an issue. I've been to countries where language has not been a problem, even if I didn't speak the local language. I think people are very excited when they see someone from outside of their own kind come in and
mm.
try to learn and understand what their culture is. I don't know. I personally have not had any experience where anyone has berated me or felt insulted that I came to learn more about them. And
Huh.
I certainly don't feel that way when someone wants to learn more about India or my life in Oman. I definitely don't feel that way. So I think that's important. That plays a big role. Yeah. So I don't see language as a barrier at all. I think it's again it goes back very much to your individual. You as an individual. What do you bring to that experience? If you are open to it, if you have the mindset where you want to learn, you want to embrace people, you want to welcome that into your life, I think you can make that work irrespective of what language you speak.
Hmm. But in Paris, you got to try a little bit, otherwise they get mad at you, right? Is that
I
true?
this is
It's a
interesting.
myth, right? It's a
I
rumor.
like that you bring that up. So
Yeah.
I've never been to Paris. I speak some French. I learned
Mhm.
French. I actually have set up to get some more private tutoring in French. Never been to that country, but I will tell you it's an interesting stereotype to have because if you've watched the show Emily in Paris, have you watched it? It's on
Yes.
Netflix.
Yes.
Okay, and
Yes.
it goes through all of those stereotypes, and one of them is very much this,
Right.
and that's not a stereotype that happens. It very much happens. It's
Sure.
not a myth. Is Americans
Yeah.
going over and expecting that everyone else should, make their world happen for them there,
That's right.
and going with this very romantic idea that everyone's gonna, help you do what it is that you want to do. I think you forget that yes, of course, people want you to make an effort. And if
A
you're
little
not
bit.
doing that, then clearly there's going to be some amount of animosity. If you go to a country and don't even know to say hello or thank you or sorry, I think that's a first step. Just learning five,
Exactly.
six very simple phrases will make it so much easier. And so, no, I will not agree to that until I've experienced that myself. So I'm not going to say yes to to what happens in Paris. That's for the day when I'm able to, and I'll report to you live from there.
I've been to Paris, I've been to Lyon, and the people are very friendly. So I don't,
Good.
that. I mean, you just try a little bit,
A
and
little bit goes a long way.
it really does. Yeah. So whenever somebody, and you tell me if these are, we're talking about kind of, I don't know, myths. So when everybody goes to Italy, I give them three pieces of advice. One, if you want to know where to eat, ask the police. The maitre d's, the cab drivers, everybody gets paid. The police do not get paid. So they'll tell you where they eat. Two, if the menu is in English, it's not a good idea to eat there. Um, It's better if it's an Italian, and even better if it's up on a chalkboard. That means it's fresh. They
Yes.
rotate it. And three, the wine, get the wine in the carafe. The local wine is less expensive and oftentimes much better than anything in a bottle. Those are my three
Nice.
tips. Thoughts?
I love those. And I've been to Italy and I will agree to every single one of those. Absolutely. I think and yes, the best thing is what's on the board.
Right.
And I would say, don't know what it is. Sometimes I will look it up, but I'll be like, that, whatever's on the board, that's the best thing to eat today. Give me that. And it would be the fresh, most amazing seafood,
Mm,
or, oh my God, spaghetti, whatever it was, cheese,
right.
just the most amazing thing, whatever was on the board. So I absolutely, totally agree with you on that. And I think the other thing is also to look for, if you have any of the display cases, and you usually see the best, like the fresh desserts or baked goods being placed at the very top. So make sure you're watching out for when they bring things out from the oven, because it always goes at the very
Interesting.
top. Oh my gosh, it's the best ever. So I'll usually go down and sit and wait at one of the dessert places, and I'd be like, okay, let's watch what's coming out next, because that's what I want to eat.
Very good tip. Yeah. I mean, fresh something out of the oven dessert. Oh my goodness, I'm getting hungry. And so
It's
I did
beautiful.
talk to it's wonderful. Yeah. I'd yeah, I'd rather have warm bread or warm dessert than like chocolate. Anyway, so I was talking to a Greek friend of mine and I told him those tips and he said, well, one time we were traveling uh I'm sorry, they weren't Greek. They're American, but they were in Greece. And a cop pulled them over. Cop says, "This is routine. Pull over. Can I see your passport?" Sure. Where you going? Well, we're here on vacation. We're going to stay in the city. The cop says, "Where are you staying?" He said, "Well, we haven't decided yet." The cop says, "Well, my brother's got a place," and pulls out a business card. And so he was doing marketing for his brother. So does that, the cops do get paid sometimes. I guess is my point.
Maybe sometimes, you never know.
Yeah,
But it's,
they kind of
the good
guide him.
part is everyone makes an effort. People
Yes.
always are helpful. And I think, again, that goes back to, how much are you willing to put out there and how much are you embracing the experience? I think anybody that you stop by and ask for as a traveler for directions or where to eat, where to find a place just to rest for a coffee, they will tell
Mm,
you. And
right.
sometimes they will be even more helpful. They will take you there. They will walk you to
Mm.
the best coffee shop that's near them, because they know that you don't speak the language. They will take you there and they will order for you. I've seen that happen in person. I
Oh,
think that's
that's
just the most
wonderful.
beautiful thing, is not knowing someone, asking them for help, and they just go out of their way from whatever it is they were doing to make sure that you're okay. I think that's just gorgeous that that happens when you travel.
Yeah, very much so. And we can learn as Americans when when there's tourists here. If you're in New York City or Los Angeles, wherever you are, and to often help them as well. I mean, I think it kind of goes around. Now, your website I signed up for your newsletter. I mean, they're gorgeous, gorgeous magazines.
Thank you.
Your monthly is just, I mean, really high level. You're an excellent writer, well accredited writer.
Thank
Um,
you.
your latest video on your YouTube is cruising. I mean
Yes.
that specific has been hit. I love to cruise, so I've been on many cruises. I've never done river yet. I want to do that, but
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Alaska, I've been the Caribbean, I've been Mediterranean. Absolutely love it. I mean, but it's going to be hard to get a couple thousand people in a boat or in a big ship like that again soon, right?
Yeah, not soon. So I would say, like I said, in the last few
Mm,
months, a lot of my stories have been inspirational travel, a lot of planning for what you can do when things are good for you. It goes down to the individual level. How comfortable are you? What are the precautions you need to take for your health, for your family? I think those are very important things to consider. Yes, of course, the whole travel industry was hit hard. Cruising was hit harder. Just people being in an enclosed space, obviously, for days on end, and they were trying to get things back up and going, the last few months, I would say, of last year. But again, now we have a new variant, we have new things in place. Everyone's sort of, rolling with how things go and trying to figure out how to make it somewhat of a semblance to the normalcy we had in the before days, as they call it, and hoping for the best. So I hope that there is some level of uniformity in what all cruises choose to do, all cruise ships and companies
mm,
choose to do as far as safety. And I hope for them, really honestly, that things get back, because it's, when you think about a cruise ship, you were just thinking of a big brand name and this big ship. There's so many people that make that ship happen. All the
Right.
people that work on it, outside of it, that bring supplies to it. There's so many lives that depend on that industry as well, and the overall travel industry. So I think, I really hope for them that things pick up, and we're able to sort of get back to more travel, once it's safe and, good for everyone.
Yeah, I hope there's a big kind of boom burst right when it happens. I mean, I can't wait to travel again. Like I mentioned, I want to go back to Italy, and you kind of saw it. When between Omicron, there, people here in the U.S. just started. Airports were all full. I think it was around Thanksgiving, if I'm not mistaken, and
Yes.
then it's kind of dipped a little bit. And so, how long have you been freelancing?
I've been freelancing full time for about 10 years.
Wow,
Yeah, I did it
wow.
on and off a little bit before that, trying to figure out if that was the best way for me to go. But once I did choose to, yeah, it's been 10 years now.
Benefits, pros and cons.
Freelancing, oh my gosh. The pros, definitely you're your own boss.
Right.
Set your own schedule, set your own clients, choose what kind of work you want to do, when you want to do it. I think those are some of the major benefits of freelancing. You don't have a boss breathing down your neck. You don't answer to this big company. And you certainly see the direct results of your efforts versus going through multiple, levels of hierarchy coming down to you.
Mm.
So it's definitely all of those pros. The cons are just the same. You are your own boss, so you do everything. You are not, you don't have a company looking after you anymore. So you do your own sales, your marketing, your admin. You throw out the trash. You order your pens. It's all you. And a lot of people forget that. They think that, okay, I'm great at writing. I'm going to start a freelancing business writing. They forget that they're not going to be writing 8 hours of the day. It's probably only going to be four, because the other four, you're going to be chasing checks. You're going to be marketing to new clients. You're going to be
Mm.
answering emails. You're going to be doing your taxes. People forget that there's all of that work going on too. So I would say that's one of the big cons of freelancing, is you're going to have to do a lot on your own. And it also might get very lonely for some people, especially if you're
Mm.
someone that loves interacting, loves having a group of people around you, loves to work with a team. You're going to have to figure out who those people are going to be for you. And that means putting in extra effort, networking and finding a group that you like to be a part of, because you'll be working for hours on end just by yourself. I think those are very big ones that people need to keep in mind as far as pros and cons.
Yeah, and even today with remote workplace shift, even people working for big companies are end up working at home and by themselves. So, it's interesting how technology is just shifting that way. Now, 10 years. I mean, how do you, yours? Do you consider yourself primarily a journalist?
Yes.
Yeah, you are certainly. Yeah, with just and so why branch out into travel?
Travel happened as part of some of the writing work that I was already doing. And then,
Mm.
of course, my interest and my background, having traveled outside of the US, that brought in a different perspective. So a lot of folks were interested in hearing that aspect. And then it just grew from there. It was just local US travel, initially. And then it started becoming more regional across the US, more international. And so it's sort of bloomed, in that way. And I enjoy it. I will not complain. It's been good.
Yeah, it is. It is. I love to travel, but I am not a good writer. I mean, is writing is journalism and art or science, Roxana?
Oh gosh, I think it's very much an art in the way that it's done by the individual,
Hmm.
uh, art performed by the individual, I would say, but a science in terms of how you perform it for the audience that you're looking at. And by that I mean, if I'm writing a story, I think the language and words and the order in which I choose to say that story is going to be very individual. But depending on the audience or the outlet, it's going to have to be formatted a certain way, and there's a science to that. So I definitely say it's a mix of both.
Yeah, and what do you do with the blank page?
Meditate. That's the running joke in my house. If I have an open Word screen with Word document with nothing on it, I'm meditating.
I
Yep.
see. I see. Do you meditate?
No, the Word doc is my meditation. That's it.
I see.
I have too
I
many. I have
see.
too many thoughts in my head to ever like be able to meditate. And I think
Mm.
honestly, sometimes the only time that I'm really focused is when I have words that I'm typing out. That's when I'm really focused and like in a flow. That's sort of my one track. But otherwise, I have too many things going on in my head um, to actually meditate. And it's interesting you pick that up because some of my friends have been using the a couple of apps to meditate. And
Yeah.
what's interesting is when I listen to the app and I listen to a word or a phrase, I'll start thinking of sentences and how I can use it in the next story. So I'm not really meditating
Wow.
anymore.
Wow. Wow.
So
Well,
yeah, not doesn't
they'll
really
tell
work
you
in my
that.
case.
Yeah. Eventually, you'll be able to separate that. What is the analogy I heard? Uh, it's like you're watching traffic, and your thoughts are the traffic. Eventually, you're in the traffic, and then eventually you'll be separated. I try to do a little bit. It helps, but I still have to do it assisted. I don't do it as often as I should. Works for some, not for others. What's your favorite thing to write about?
Travel.
Yeah, travel's it, right?
Travel's it. Of course, there's different ways you can put it. There's travel in dining, travel in culture, travel in the arts,
Mm,
travel in the businesses that help in the travel process. There's a few different ways that can go, but sort of the overall umbrella of travel, I do enjoy that.
hmm. Is mental health an issue in journalism?
Oh yes, of course. It's a big one, especially freelancers, and especially with the last few months of the pandemic. It's been hard. A lot
Hmm,
of the I will say that the media industry, media publishing industry, took a big hit in a way because a lot of the print outlets closed down. They were already sort of going down, and then a bunch of them closed. Some of them moved entirely to digital. The
mm,
digital outlets decided to do lesser content. Content was moving into different platforms. There's a lot of video being done, which if you're not in the video content side, then where do you go from there? And then for the ones for journalists that were working on staff, if the media publishing houses closed, then they were turning to freelance as well. So then the freelance market became pretty big. So there's been a few different ebbs and flows going on in media publishing industry, especially in the U.S. That's been kind of hard. And I think for freelancers, if it wasn't already difficult, now it made much more competition come into the market.
mm.
So it's been tough trying to find outlets that pay you well, pay you on time. These are all issues that folks have faced. Again,
Wow.
like I said, if you are working as a freelancer, there's so much that you have to do yourself. Um, and then if you don't have the right accountability groups or networking groups or organizations that you're a member of, if you don't have sort of the camaraderie with others, then you sort of start feeling very lonely in the process of
Hmm,
working freelance. So I think in journalism that has been a big part of it. And I'm talking about only the work related, as far as freelance, but there's so much other in terms of mental health. What about the folks that are covering hardcore COVID related issues? They're out there every day seeing it in real time. And that's a tough job to do day in and day out, especially at the height of when things first hit. I believe there were a couple of, I think on broadcast television, at least a few cases of, presenters breaking down on TV because just taking
wow.
that firsthand was so much for them. That's a mental health issue too.
Wow.
And there's just so much we don't talk about because we're just going on with, the everyday of performing our jobs. And when you're so busy doing that, you don't take a moment to realize, well, where is my mental health? And what end of the spectrum is it at? Do I recognize I have a mental health issue? I don't know. Sometimes people are oblivious to the fact that they could be having those problems. So it's a very big topic. I'm glad that it has been coming out more in the open in the last few months. I hate that it
Mm,
happened because of the pandemic, but
right.
unless a lot of things, unless you're sort of pushed into a corner to address it, it never really comes out into the open. So I think this is one of those topics. So yes, it's definitely an issue. There's different levels to it, and different kinds of factors that affect mental health. And I really do hope more journalists are open to talking about it and addressing it for themselves.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said, Roxana. And we have seen, more athletes and more artists, openly talk about their mental health issues. And I think it really helps because there's been a stigma,
Hmm.
excuse me. You can handle that or whatever it may be, but it's a real issue. We saw it in the Olympics. So, I mean, athletes at the highest level talk about
Hmm.
mental issues, and it helps. I think it really helps.
It
So the
does.
podcast, it does, right? And just us talking about it and more people talking about it,
Hmm.
it's more prevalent than we think. If your arm's broken, you can't hide that. If you're mentally, if you have mental health issues, you can hide it because it's not
Hmm.
physically visible.
Yes.
So we want to try to discuss it and bring it out a little bit more. So on the podcast, we talk a lot about discipline.
Hmm.
People ask me how I lose all the weight, and I just say discipline. Do you consider yourself a disciplined person?
Where it serves me well, yes.
Huh.
I believe there are areas of my work that require discipline, especially on the professional side. A lot of discipline to keep myself organized, make sure all my clients' needs are met, make sure my finances are in order. I think those areas
Mm,
take a lot of discipline. And I have certain processes I put into place over the years that work well for me to make sure I'm doing well there. But then that also means that I give myself leeway to not be as regimented or structured in other parts of my life, so I can allow for some of that little unexpected magic to happen. So I like to look at it
mm.
that way.
Yeah. Does journalism itself require a lot of discipline? Do you know colleagues that are not disciplined in journalism?
I think there are folks that are not, and it works for them.
Hmm.
It really just depends on what your personal preference of working is. I really don't think there's a one size fits all, honestly, in
Mm.
anything that you do. It's so dependent on your likes and preferences, your lifestyle, your background, the way you like to work on things versus someone else. I do know that it's worked for a lot of folks for them to not be as routine. I know folks that work on a completely different time schedule than mine and still produce the most amazing work, and
Huh.
that's fine, that works for them. But if you tried making
Right.
me work on their schedules, there's no way I'd be writing.
Right.
I'd be
Right.
meditating on that empty Word document we talked about. So I think it works for
Yeah.
folks that want that structure, and in whichever areas you need it to work for you.
Now, how about freelancing? There's got to be a certain amount of structure and discipline there because you're your own boss. And
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely will say that required a lot of effort on my part to figure out that structure as the years went by, because initially it was give me what you got, I'll take anything, right? It was I'm
mm,
freelancing, I want all the work, I will take whatever comes along. And if that meant waking up at 5 a.m. and answering a client call, I was good with it. And if I had to work late into the night to submit something the next day, I was good with it. But this again sort of comes into very closely to the mental health perspective. Well, if you're doing all of
mm,
that, where are you allowing yourself time to breathe and live? Where are you giving your mind the time to relax? And so I think after the sort of the first 2 or 3 years of the so-called hustle lifestyle, I think I
mm,
figured out that's not a long-term solution to anything. That is not sustainable
mm.
in a 5 year, 10 year, 12 year plan. It's not going to happen. And that's when I had to put myself down to, okay, we need things in place, we need processes and systems in place. And I say we, it's me, I'm basically talking about
Right.
myself. I need to put things
Yes.
down in place. And that means sometimes sort of removing yourself from the business and looking at it from the outside, which is very hard to do if you are the business. It's really
Mm,
hard. And so those things kind of had to be a very disciplined effort. And then practicing that, right? Just putting it down on paper doesn't make it a process. You then have to practice that every day to make sure this works for you. Do you need to fine tune it? Every quarter, every half year, on the year, do you want to do this differently? Are these clients good for you? Are you getting paid well? Are these processes good for you? There's so much that you need to kind of look into. And yes, discipline, I think, in my experience, play a very big part in that. Yeah.
yeah, Rafana, you just outlined the very issues that even a small business faces,
Hmm.
and you are a small business, but you're
Yep.
all the employees. So, uh, yeah, when I started my company, yeah, I was, by myself and I did
Right.
everything. Yeah. And it's rewarding. And, you know, sometimes I remember doing it and I would hear people say, must be nice not having a boss. And I said, well, everybody who pays me really is my boss. So I got a lot more than I thought I would, and if I tell them, to go screw off or something, then I won't get paid. You can get away with that maybe with a manager or something and get a second chance. But yeah, not when you're by yourself. It's very difficult.
No.
But in the end, hopefully it's worth it.
Yes.
So yeah, how do you measure success, Roxana?
I measure success on a couple of different levels. I think starting out, I did not have that in place. Again, like I said, the first 2 or 3 years, I was just on it. And I think my success was, do I have enough in the bank? Okay, we're good. Can I cover all my credit
Mm,
cards? We're good. Like that was my
mm,
level of success. Um, that wasn't amounting to much, clearly. It was a very low
mm,
level of success. If that's all I was looking to cover. Um, once I started putting down a plan of where does this go in 5 years, in 10 years? What kind of lifestyle do I want? What does that look like in monetary terms? And what is
mm,
that figure? How can I get to that figure if I break that down over months, over weeks? It came down to that point of, okay, if I need to make this amount of money at the end of the year, this is how many clients I'm going to need at this many hours at this rate. So it was sort of looking at that big picture and what that value was to it, and then bringing down to blocks of hours of work or projects that I would do for me to be able to achieve that. So that's sort of the thought process that I took as an approach to be able to plan that out for myself. If that answers your question.
yeah, you establish goals, and then you establish measurables to get there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, I mean, that looks different for everyone. I will say that.
Mm,
Someone else's end goal is to buy a home, be able to afford education for 3 children, 4 children, whatever that is, take care of their parents. So for some, it's just travel in and out all the way. I've met folks that way. Some people want to set up 1 or 2 businesses. It's different for everybody, but having an idea of what that looks like in a number versus, oh, I'll feel great when I have a home. That's really not a
mm.
goal. But my home is going to cost me $700,000. How do I get there in 5 years? Then that's a plan. And then you're starting to put yourself into the little steps that will take you there. So, what does that look like to you? Right. And I think, again, a lot of people, the big mistake they make here is, I want a home. And then that's all they're thinking of. What about everything else that goes around it? Who's going to live
That's
in that
right.
home? You and who else? Like 4 other family members? Who's providing for them when you get into that home? How much, where is that home going to be? Are you going to travel to that home? What is that going to cost you? There's so
Furniture.
many things that people forget that's surrounding that. So I think
Yeah.
it's very important that when you're planning these things, that you sort of look at all aspects, right? Your health, your physical, mental, emotional health, your financial health, your personal health, right? What your relationships are and what that's going to take you to get there. Professional health. So there's all these aspects. I think people just need to see it as an overall um, plan rather than here's this one goal and then everything else is going to fall apart while I get to that one goal. It's not really going to help anyone.
Yeah, that's very important. Well said as well. Oftentimes we hear people, well, I want to lose weight. Well, I mean, how much do you want to lose? At what point? At what
Yes.
date? And what are you going to do to get there? Let's make it realistic and
hmm
specific. And so, what motivates you?
What motivates me? My work definitely motivates me. I love getting up in the morning, knowing that
Do
I'm going
you?
to have a variety of different things to do. I do love that. I will say yes. I love variety in my work, in my experiences, in the food I eat, in the music I listen to, in the movies I watch. I love variety in everything. So I really enjoy. I know I think I'm blessed to find myself in a place today where I enjoy getting up in the morning and checking out, what's going to happen today. What do I have on my plate? What do I have to do? Um, and that includes, podcasts, whether I'm interviewing other people for stories, whether I'm actually sitting down writing a story, researching. I do enjoy that. So I'm very motivated by the work that I do. I love what I do, and I think that's the big part of it. Travel motivates me a lot. So
Mm,
I'm trying to think of where to go this year. Where is safe to go? Can I travel there? Is it okay? What the local protocols are? I'm trying to be very mindful of that. So I just sort of started planning my calendar for the year. So travel is a big part of it. Locally, I do enjoy going out dining. I love new experiences. I love going to the theater or watching performances. Um, Really, just about anything will make me have a little high and be like, oh, okay, this is fun. Let's go see what this is. So, not a lot. I get motivated very easily, I would say.
Good for you. You're a very positive, uplifting person.
Thank you. I'd like to be that
Yeah,
way. I like to be that
yeah.
way.
Well, it's reflective in your writing, and just by our conversation today, it's it's very warming and welcoming. Um, but thank you so much
Thank you.
for your time today, Ruksana Hussain. I appreciate it. Please, whoever's listening, please tell us how we get in touch with you. Everybody's got to get this monthly newsletter. It's incredible.
Oh,
It's
perfect.
beautiful. It's well written. Please go there. Please, how can we get in touch with you?
Oh, thank you, Joey. I appreciate those words. I do. It's again a very lonely business putting out that magazine by myself, so I do appreciate the kind words. You can find it at travelerandtourist.com. You can subscribe for it there, and then it comes to your inbox every month. 52 pages full of travel ideas, destinations, inspiration, products. We've got a couple of videos in there too. And then, you can find the blog posts on the website as well, travelerandtourist.com. And then if anyone wants to reach out to me about anything on the freelancing or solopreneur business side, I'm on ruxanawrites.com. So either of those two. And then all of my social media channels are on there as well. So I'd love to connect with anybody. And if I can be helpful to anyone with their travels or their freelancing, I'd be more than happy to.
Fantastic. And I'll put all of those links in the show
Thank you.
notes. Roxana, thank you so much for your time. If I'm ever you're in Southern California?
I'm in
You're
LA.
in
I'm
Los
in
Angeles?
Hollywood.
Yeah.
I'm right in
Ah, you're in
Hollywood.
Hollywood. My
Yes,
daughter's
come
at
see
Cal
me.
State. Yeah,
Oh,
my daughter's at
wonderful.
Yeah, at Northridge. Yeah, so maybe we'll get together,
Okay,
have a cup of coffee.
that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. You be well, stay healthy, safe travels.
Thank you. You too. Take care.
Bye now. Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations.